first big job, which lasted 15 years, and started a company. And I think the happiest days of my life were when you started, and every day you went in and you did everything. And I was just telling these guys, this was to show you our age differences before PCs. Now, I know a lot of you don't know there was a before PC period in history. It was not the Middle Ages. It was in the early 80s. And every Saturday I went up to a barn in Connecticut where a guy had created a little lab, and my job was to solder all the resistors and capacitors into the circuit boards. And we made our own hardware. We didn't make keyboards. We bought those from a company out in Idaho. I forget the Keytronics, rings a bell. I don't know what it was. And the monitors, we made our own sheet metal to put it in, but we didn't make the monitors or the software and that. But we did build our own, what you would call a PC. And we also had to build an internet because the internet didn't exist. And so we'd rent a phone line out to a city. I'd go out there and find somebody who was willing to rent us a closet. We'd have a 9600 baud line, which was a very fast line. Mostly you could only get 48s, but every once in a while you paid a lot of money if you get a 9600 baud line. And then you'd have a MUX, and you'd have 4800 baud lines going out to the individual customers. And if it broke, the service was you had to wait until I had some free time and could get on an airplane and get out and fix it, because I know my competency. I couldn't write the software and I couldn't design the hardware, but I could go out and plug stuff in. And those were the best days. Today, I don't know, I sort of lost track of the number of applications, and people always come up to me and say, "Oh, we miss you." And I say, "That's great. How long have you been with the company?" 5 years. Yeah, well, I've been out of there 12, so thank you very much. But it's exciting to do new things. And I was out in California, in Palo Alto 3 weeks ago. We're trying to get universities around the world to open campuses here in New York City, because particularly with applied sciences and engineering, the graduates tend to start companies where they went to school, and we're going to diversify our economy, particularly in IT. And I think we will become the IT capital of the world, getting some of them to come here. And Stanford is one of those that's very interested. There's 17 that have given us proposals, and we'll pick somebody in the fall. But you could have 2 or 3 of these guys open new campuses here. Anyways, John Doerr is an old friend of mine, so I spent breakfast with a dozen entrepreneurs who had started companies in the environmental green space. And then at dinner with a bunch of guys who did it in the IT world. Groupon was there, and Dorsey was there, a whole bunch of these guys. And it's just fascinating. I shake my head. Would I have thought about that if I were in the business with you guys? I don't know. But there's still an enormous amount of opportunity, and all you guys have a chance to do something that we didn't do. I gave a speech at Facebook maybe 6 months ago, and I had a few thousand people in the room. To say they were all younger than me is overstating it. They were younger than my daughters. And I said, I thought there were really 2 game changers in recent memory. And one was Facebook et al., but the fact that you could communicate with enormous numbers of people, and so the economics of businesses, you could make a penny, but if you did it 10 million at a time, it starts to add up to real money. And so that was, and I don't know that Facebook is the guy that survives or anybody else, but there's lots of different opportunities. But that concept of being able to talk to so many people at once. And the other, I thought, was the iPad. And the reason I think the iPad is a game changer is because it's probably the most powerful computer most people have ever touched, and yet when you open the box, there is no manual, and there is no help system. And if you think about it, we all say we have to teach kids technology in school. I would argue that this shows you don't have to. People like you who want to be in the technology space will take care of the technology, but the users don't need the technologies. What the users need is the old values more than ever before. Reading and writing and asking a question and understanding an answer and working collectively and collaboratively. And with all of the technology at your fingertips without having to realize that it's there, the world becomes much more open, but it also becomes much more competitive. And so the old values are more important, and that is very worrisome to me, because if you look in the schools, it's the old values that we aren't teaching and are afraid to teach. Every elected official says, I'm going to get a computer in the classroom, and I'm going to put a computer in front of every kid. And you sit there and you say, wait a second, these kids all have smartphones that are more powerful with more memory than the biggest IBM computer of the 1960s. What are you going to get them? I mean, the PC manufacturers are scared to death that they are not going to have any business, that the smartphone or the equivalent of that, or whether it's in pad format or a small format that fits in your pocket, is where the world is going, and going much more rapidly than anybody counted on. And whether our school system can adapt, I don't know. The old values are much harder to teach. So anyways, good luck to all of you. I hope you are phenomenally successful and pay a lot of taxes. That's the way I look at you as taxpayers. Think of it that way. I don't know that I had a good time when I was your age. So the other thing I would advise you to do is you make a career here. I don't care what anybody says. This is the Big Apple. This is the intellectual capital of the world, and we've already taken over the fashion industry, for example. We have double the number of fashion houses of any other city in the world. Paris is not the fashion capital. New York is. Media, obviously, the same thing. It's going to be IT as we go. Somebody said, oh, you'll never compete because you don't have enough colleges. Boston, where I grew up incidentally, is the college town. New York City has more college and graduate students than Boston has people. The magnitude of what we do here, the scale is so much different. And the biggest thing we have going for us is diversity. It is the diversity of this city that gets you a variety of cuisines and religions and language. It's the people that provide the cultural capital and the intellectual capital in business. It's the entrepreneurial spirit. And unfortunately, the country, and in fact a lot of the world, is going against immigration. Europe is even arguably worse than America is, and America, I think, is committing national suicide. I've tried to start an organization to encourage Congress to open the borders, and I picked Rupert Murdoch, who is an immigrant, an Australian, and Fox News is very anti-immigration. But if I can co-opt them to help us convince Congress that we just have to get the best and the brightest from around the world to come here. The other thing is New York is different than any other city. If you go out, if you're thinking about going elsewhere, think about the following. In other cities, people live in neighborhoods, and they don't mix. And if you go back and remember, I don't know if any of you have ever seen My Fair Lady. It was a movie a long, long time. Barbara Streisand played in the movie a long, long time ago. The whole issue was she had to change her accent because an accent said where you were, and you didn't mix. And so if you went from one neighborhood to another, people stepped back and said, I wonder what they're doing here. Maybe I should call the cops. In New York City, we don't live in neighborhoods. We don't live as a mosaic. We live as a mixture. And so people go down the steps to the subway standing next to people that look different, act different, dress different, sound different, smell different. But when they do it every day, the differences turn out not to be threatening. And so people are much more accepting of each other in New York City than any place else. And that's one of the great strengths of the city. The other thing is that the social fabric of New York is built around business and philanthropy. It is a meritocracy. Nobody in America, certainly not in New York, asks who your parents were, how much money you have. There's some people that dress in suits and the people that dress very casually, and it really has little to do with what you can afford. It's where you are in space and what kind of friends you have and what kind of company you work for. And so you'll see people socializing together that would not any place else in any other city, and that's also one of the great strengths of New York. So, anyways, good luck to all of you. I have no idea what I'm doing for the rest of the day, but events. And I came here in 1966 to Vietnam, and at the last minute, because of flat feet, the Army didn't want me, and so I went to work on Wall Street for what I thought would be a year while I looked for a job. I'd gone to Johns Hopkins to study physics, and it turned out that there was a German requirement. Why German? Well, if you think about it, at that time, in 1960, it wasn't very long since all of the physicists were German and gotten out of Germany just before the war. And Niels Bohr and Einstein and all of these guys were German. If you didn't speak German, the theory was you couldn't read any of the research that was done. And then so I became an electrical engineer after 3 weeks in German, where I learned to speak German. Engineering didn't have that problem. And then, I never made a mistake when college. It's the greatest city in the world. So thank you. This is for you guys. Got a picture? T-shirt, right? Oh, for you. Well, the question is what size T-shirt. They always give me extra large. A medium, thank you. This one. Usually the T-shirt holds me and my girlfriend. Thank you very much.
And a hoodie also?
That's exactly what I want. What I do when I get a lot of T-shirts, I do wear every one of them to run once. Yeah. No way, but thank you. All the best. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Huh? Okay. Where do you want?
Everyone just wants to